Hello, my name is Ariel. I'm the owner of Fitness by Ariel. I have been working as a professional in the fitness industry for over a decade as a certified personal trainer, group fitness instructor, yoga instructor, meditation instructor, retired professional athlete, amongst other things. And this video is the second of 3 videos talking about my philosophy on nutrition and what it looks like when you work with me on nutrition. If this is the first video you're watching, then stop it right here and go back to the first video, because the first video lays the foundation about my philosophies and what it looks like to work on nutrition with me. This second video is about macros, what they are, who macros are good for, who macro counting plans would be good for, and who they would not be good for, and as well as how to determine your daily expenditure, your daily caloric expenditure, and why that's important. In the third video, we'll go even deeper into specific macros and how I determine what individual macros a person should be eating. So please watch the first video first, as each video gets more and more detailed and continues off of the previous video. Okay, so macros. First, let's talk about who a macro counting plan would be good for and who it would not be good for. So a macro counting plan would be good for someone who needs more structure and more of a detailed plan when it comes to tracking their food, whether that's for body composition changes or muscle building, fat loss, or perhaps their results have stalled from the nutrition plan they were doing before and they're ready to get a little more detailed about what food is coming in. For people who really thrive on that structure and that discipline, counting macros can feel really safe and actually freeing and flexible. It can feel kind of grounding to know that you have this specific plan to lean back on. For someone who has a history of disordered eating, especially folks who obsessively counted calories in the past or counted macros in the past, it might be harmful. For some of those folks, it can actually be the opposite of freeing and can actually trigger disordered thinking around food again, which is, of course, not the goal. So if someone's extremely type A, thrives on dates and numbers and tracking macros can help them kind of lean in the direction of intuitive eating. And it's through tracking that they might come to understand how proteins, carbs, and fats affect their bodies specifically. If said person obsesses about tracking to the point where they feel unable to make intuitive decisions about eating without it. For example, if someone couldn't go out to eat with friends or go to a celebratory event like a wedding or some other thing in their life that's important, and they feel like it's getting in the way of them enjoying themselves because they can't make choices about what to eat or how much to eat without first tracking, and it causes any stress, then we know that a macro counting plan wouldn't be the best for someone like that. So it's always good to determine, is this gonna help steer me in the direction I want to go or away from the direction I want to go. And so if macro planning wouldn't be helpful for a person, and as your coach, when I'm doing my intake, I can kind of help you determine that, is it going to be helpful or not? And if it's not, there's totally tons of other behavioral changes that we can make around food that might be helpful. For example, learning how to incorporate more protein or more vegetables, learning new recipes that make for good substitutes for many of the foods you already like to eat. So these are different behavioral and lifestyle changes that we can make without having to track macros. So again, this is part of you working with me as your coach and me working with you as an individual, is that I work with you to create a plan that fits your lifestyle and help you find success in the long term. So Um, if it does it resonate? Does it feel motivating? Is it worth it? What's the time frame? Can we move in the direction of an intuitive eating plan and start out with macros? These are all questions that I like to ask before we dive into a macro plan. So many people ask me if I count macros. Well, don't you count macros? And at this current moment today, on this February day in 2024, I am not actively counting macros. I have a lot of experience counting macros in my own life, as well as coaching others in counting macros. And in fact, I have done so much to the point where I actually can make a pretty good estimate as to how many calories I'm eating in a day and when my body needs more proteins, carbs, or fats, or where I'm under or over where my needs are, both with calories as well with macros. And I understand that for some people, that kind of intuition about what their body needs, some people have an easier time with that because maybe they were raised in a family or culture that nurtured that sense of knowing what foods affect their body. And for some people, that's not intuitive, and it's something that needs to be learned because perhaps they weren't raised to know differences between proteins, carbs, and fats and how they affect our bodies, or we've never been shown how to pay attention to our bodies in that way. And so or perhaps seasonally, like eating seasonally or having different needs during different times of the month, intuitive eating. For some people, those practices come more naturally, and for others, we need to learn. We need some education around that, and that's okay. That's why we hire professionals and people who know more than us so that they can teach us. And so we all have to learn somehow. We're all new at something sometime. So macros and macro counting can potentially provide a platform for that learning for people who it's good for. So perhaps macro counting is something you do for a short period of time for a certain goal, like a vacation or a wedding, or perhaps you use it as a foundation for learning, like I said, so that you can sustain a new nutritional lifestyle for the long term. So when I coach you and when we do one-on-one coaching, we take all of these individual pieces of you and your goals and your lifestyle into consideration when creating a plan for you. I help you set realistic goals, right? So I'll always be honest with you. If I feel like my plan and my approach isn't what's best for you, or I'm unable to give you the specific support that you need, I'll no doubt give you the resources and point you in the direction of proper support. As you would have heard in my previous video, I am not a dietitian. I am a fitness nutrition specialist and can give you nutrition plans and advice based on your activity and your lifestyle. And so let's talk a little bit about macros and what they are. First thing about macros and what they are, it's very simple. People get very confused, so I'm here to debunk any misconceptions you have about what macro counting is or isn't. Macronutrients, macros stand for macronutrients, and the macronutrients, there's 3 of them. It's proteins and carbs and fats. And you are already on a macronutrient plan, meaning you're already eating some combination of proteins, carbs, and fats. So when we talk about tracking macros, it's really just tracking what's already coming in and breaking that down more specifically than calories. So we have how many calories you're eating overall, and then more specifically, how many grams of proteins, carbs, and fats make up those calories. So before we start changing the macros or changing the calories, we'll find when we just track, just to see, just purely for observation, we'll find that the majority of people are eating a varying amount day by day, depending on when they went grocery shopping, if there was a holiday, or perhaps they eat differently Monday through Friday versus over the weekend. And so when we track our macros, it gives us some insight about how we're eating now, and it kind of helps us understand where we're starting from and then where we need to move, where we need to go moving forward. So when I give you a macro plan, the first thing that we try to do for many people is just eating a consistent amount. So it's eating just the same or similar amount of calories day by day instead of a huge variety, like over 500 calorie difference day by day. It becomes challenging to really dial in those changes that we want to see. So oftentimes it's just seeing, okay, what's like the average amount of calories that you're eating in a day, and how do we bring each day closer to that average instead of being up and down every day. So as your coach, this helps me because I can observe how a certain amount of food is affecting your body over time. And of course, we need enough time and consistency on a specific amount of calories in order to know what changes to make from there. So it's only kind of from this baseline that I can know as your coach what the next best step is. So we can't really change a plan that's not really a plan, right, all over the place. And again, I'm talking specifically with macros. If you're like, wait a minute, I just need to eat more protein, or I just need to eat more veggies, or I just need to eat better, I don't want to count macros, this video is not for you. Go back and watch the one before this. Okay, so first, before we determine how many proteins, carbs, and fats you should be eating, we need to first determine what your daily expenditure is. Total daily energy expenditure. Its acronym is TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. And this is how many calories a specific person's body burns in a given day. And so we'll find that a person with the same body stats, for example, people who are the same age, the same height, the same weight, if one person is a lot more active than the other person, even though all of their body stats are the same, they're going to have different nutritional dietary needs because of the energy that they're expending in a day, depending on what their lifestyle is. So it gets really specific to each person, which is why I love utilizing macros when it can be helpful for a person, because it gets really individualized. And it's also allows for flexibility for different people. So depending on their culture, depending on what they like to eat, depending on if they're vegetarian, if they're vegan, if they love eating certain things and not other things, macro plans can account for all of that because it's very flexible. So in order to determine a person's daily expenditure, there's different ways that we can do it more specifically. The best way is to use body fat. So if I get to see you in person, I always like to take your body fat, and the body fat is more specific than just weight, because body fat tells us your composition, meaning how much fat mass you have versus how much muscle mass. So we get a clearer picture of your lean mass versus fat mass, rather than just your weight, which is just the weight of your flesh suit on earth. So I use those specific numbers to determine your daily expenditure, and there's just online calculators where you can submit your information about your daily expenditure. So for example, let's say Sarah is 150 pounds and her daily expenditure is 2,200 calories in the summer when she's working out every day. In the winter, when she's only working out 1 to 2 days per week, maybe, her calorie expenditure, her daily expenditure goes down to 1,950. So based on many factors, I'll determine what your calorie intake should be. So how much do you intend to move your body? So are you on a 5-day workout plan with me? Are you not on a workout plan at all? Are you simply mostly stagnant at work? Or do you just go on a 20-minute walk every day? How much you work out and how intensely you work out has to do with your daily expenditure. So I take all of that into consideration. I also take into consideration how much you're eating now and what your goals are moving forward, what types of foods sit well with you. And after I come up with your daily expenditure, then from that number, I break it down into your specific macros, your proteins, carbs, and fats, which I will detail out how I do in the next video.